Hello, and welcome to this episode of the American Translators Association podcast. I'm ATA President David Rumsey.
And I'm ATA President-elect Corinne McKay. Thanks for joining us.
We're calling this episode of the podcast our 2017 halftime show because we're here at about halfway through the year, and we thought we'd give you an update on what's been going on inside ATA in the past 6 months and what we've got in store for the rest of the year. Our regular host, Matt Baird, is out of town, so in his absence, we'll be doing this episode on our own, and we look forward to hearing from Matt when he returns.
And as always, we'd like to thank all of our listeners for your support of ATA and for being ATA members. We really mean it when we say that without you, we would have no association at all, and we appreciate everything you do to support ATA. So, David, let's kick off with a question for you now that you are on the home stretch of your ATA presidency, which wraps up at the conference in October. What do you see as ATA's major accomplishments or changes during your term in office?
Wow. Well, when I started out as president, indeed as president-elect, the association faced significant financial hurdles. We had an equity deficit that had been persisting, even though we were trying to make incremental changes in order to reduce it. And I said to myself, essentially, when I came into this position as president, if I could get all the numbers into the black by the end of 2 years, I would consider that a job well done. And I was very happy that after the Miami conference, we were able to turn the ship around significantly, and we were able to eventually eliminate the equity deficit in July of 2016, thanks to some really difficult decisions we made about the Miami conference in terms of the pricing and in terms of pushing to get all the savings that we could from the conference, as well as those we could get from other programs. And we were also fortunate to make a small surplus as well after the San Francisco conference. So we've been in a fortunate position recently to kind of invest some of those extra funds into other areas of the association. Particularly, we worked a lot on expanding the public relations program. We now have a large team there that's involved. They're working with a professional PR firm. The budget has been doubled for that group. We've also provided speaker training to a group of speakers who've done business outreach with a number of business associations, including the STC, the Society for Technical Communicators, the Philadelphia Bar Association, the American Chemical Association, the American Copy Editors Society, Rocky Mountain Paralegals. I'm actually on my way to the International Association of Business Communicators on Monday to talk about translation. We also were able to use some of those funds to outreach to other associations and groups that represent translators and interpreters, including NAGIT, which represents court interpreters, the groups at ISO, which is an organization that organizes standards for translation and interpreting. We went to one of their major meetings so that ATA could have a voice in how these standards are being created. I reached out to the folks at the AMTA, the machine translation people, so that they could hear from us as actual translators about how we see the development of machine translation. We did some additional outreach to sister associations. I was at the Abraches conference in Brazil 2 weeks ago, which is a wonderful group. They host the second largest number of ATA association members outside of the USA. They're all in Brazil. And we are going to be at the FIT Congress in August, early August of this year, to reach out to a host of different associations around the world, as well as restore our relationship with FIT. And we were also in attendance to a FIT meeting in Ottawa earlier in March. Other kinds of housekeeping items that we did over the course of my term, a lot involved basically cleaning things up with the certification committee. We have implemented a keyboarded exam at this point that allows people to bring their own laptops into the exam. People can purchase practice tests online. We've added credentials, an option for credentialed interpreters to get listed on the ATA directory. I want to thank everybody at IPAC who helped organize that, because that was an incredible amount of work to sift through all those different types of credentials. That went live in San Francisco. We've also been working hard to turn the webinar series around. We now offer a host of different webinars that are based on various subject matter topics, as well as topics related to independent contractors or business practices, as well as language-focused webinars. And we also put in a lot of effort to improve member communications while I've been president. We updated the antitrust compliance policy and added a commentary so that people could really understand what the purpose of that policy is and how they can use it or apply it in their real life. We created ATA Talk, which is a listserv for people to connect with others to talk about ATA policies and activities. We created a YouTube channel. We've also created this podcast. And most recently, at the last session, we approved a redesign of the ATA website. So you kind of end where you start. I remember when I joined the board all those years ago, I basically came in demanding that we would improve the ATA website, and I was put in charge of that committee. And now, as I'm leaving the board, I'm leaving it to another group who's going to take over redesigning the website. Mm-hmm. It's a long list, but I know, from my own time as president-elect, Corinne, that you've been very focused on the conference. So would you like to give us a quick wrap-up of the San Francisco conference and tell the members out there what's in store for DC?
Sure. So we were really pleased with the San Francisco attendance figures. It was over 1,800 people, which exceeded our projections. And as we all know, the board made a decision to take a closer look at the conference costs and pricing a couple of years ago. So a couple of our core programs, like the Chronicle, will probably always be seen largely as member benefits. And in that sense, they really are not expected to earn money or necessarily even be self-supporting. But we're really pleased that we've now had 2 conferences in a row that have generated revenue that can then be used to offer additional benefits to all of our members. Our evaluations from the San Francisco conference were also very positive. And as we continue to get more and more proposals for conference sessions, the quality of the sessions, of course, goes up because we have more to choose from and we can pick the very best. We were also really pleased with attendance levels and feedback we got on our inaugural Advanced Skills and Training Day, which is held on the Wednesday before the conference. And last year, we really restyled that as a conference before the conference with hands-on workshops that teach skills that you can apply right away in your own work. And many of the sessions sold out, which we were really pleased with. In terms of the DC conference, hopefully everybody knows that we will be meeting at the Washington Hilton, right in the heart of DC, walking distance to DuPont Circle, and the conference dates are October 25th through 28th. As some of you may have heard, we got over 425 proposals for 169 session slots. So again, we feel like we've picked the real cream of the crop when it comes to the sessions. And for those of you who really like to plan ahead, I'll mention the sites of our upcoming conferences. New Orleans in 2018, we'll be in Palm Springs, California in 2019, Boston in 2020, and Minneapolis, Minnesota in 2021. So those are a nice mix of large and small, East and West and Central, and we'll also be experimenting with a small convention center in Palm Springs. So David, moving on to another topic, can you give us an update on how ATA's computerized certification exam is going? We all know it was an exciting new development of the last year or so, and it would be great to hear how it is being rolled out.
Thanks. Yeah, well, I also wanted to mention, just a few weeks ago, I actually signed a contract for the 2022 conference that's going to be held in Los Angeles, California. So all the members can mark that on their calendar as well. In terms of the computerized certification exam, it's going really well. We had sort of an epiphany where we decided early on to switch from a computerized solution to security to a more physical, an actual sort of nuts and bolts solution by simply increasing the number of proctors that are there in the exam who can monitor people who will use their own laptops and make sure that they're not on any inappropriate sites or chatting with anybody online. And so far, we haven't had any reports of any major problems. So all signs point to expanding this approach and making computerized exams with extra proctors the default in the next few years. So we also want to say that we noticed the popularity of the exam prep sessions that were held at AST, the AST Day session that you were talking about. And we're looking for a way to expand that throughout the year. So perhaps giving additional exam prep sessions through different parts of the country throughout the year. Corinne, another topic that our listeners might be interested in is public relations and what's going on with that. And I know that you were a former member of the Public Relations Committee. Can you fill us in?
Yeah, sure. So as some of our members know, we did a major revamp of our PR program a couple of years back, dramatically increasing the budget and bringing in a professional PR and speaker trainer to help us train a new group of spokespeople and a new group of event speakers as well. And alongside that, we've created a writers group that writes articles about translation-related topics for business people. And we then work with a professional PR firm that places those articles in a wide variety of trade publications where we can really reach people who know little to nothing about translation and interpreting, but either have to, want to, or should be using translators and interpreters in their work. And we'd like to give a big shout out to our PR committee chair, Madalena Sanchez-Zampaulo, who coordinates all of this and works with our PR firm on placing these articles that the writers group creates, as well as all the other awesome volunteers on the PR committee who keep things running. So just to give some examples of the types of PR inquiries that we field and the type of outbound PR that we do, David, you recently talked to CNBC about growth in the translation industry, as well as doing an interview for an NBC News article. Did you want to tell us anything about those?
Yeah, thanks. CNBC actually reached out to us about a week or so ago. They had noticed the growth in job opportunities in T&I, and they wanted to see if we could comment on that and perhaps help them arrange a TV segment on it. I outlined some of the stats about the 24% jump in the number of translation companies that have been out there since the past 7 years, as well as the fact that the number of employees in the language industry has more than doubled in those same 7 years. And as of this morning, actually, we are in serious discussions now about a possible segment on job opportunities for contractors in the language industry for CNBC. So I have my fingers crossed that the folks and the producers at CNBC will decide to move forward with this. But we've had a very good relationship with them. Also, we received a request for an interview from NBC.com to get comments about the recent advances in MT. And it was a nerve-wracking interview, but I was very pleased with the results of the interview, and we were able to communicate some of the key points in respect to MT that it doesn't really understand the context of the sentence that it's translating, and that, as a human, you're able to recognize that you might translate one sentence one way for one particular client or context, and that same sentence a different way for a different client or a different context. And that ultimately, in any empty situation, you're still going to need a human linguist to be able to evaluate the quality of the output, because even if it looks right, it may not be right, and that you need somebody who speaks both the source and the target language. And I was very happy that they were able to include some of those points in the article and gave a really good response from ATA to these kinds of developments. So, it's been really interesting to see how many media inquiries we have. Corinne, do you want to talk a little bit about the writers group?
Sure. Our writers group has been hard at work on a variety of articles. They've written 8 in total, which our PR firm has placed in a wide variety of publications that target industries that use or might need translators or interpreters. Some recent examples are an article on legal risks in translation written by Martin Cross, an article on deciding what you need and don't need to translate written by Matt Baird, and an article on the role of language professionals as depicted in the movie Arrival written by Ann Connor. So David, to wrap up, I know that during your term as president, you've raised ATA's profile in terms of advocating for the translation and interpreting professions in general. And one of our additions to the ATA conference this year is our new Advocacy Day. Did you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks. ATA is described as an umbrella organization. We have translators, interpreters, we have academics, we have people who are software developers, we have agency owners, we have a large number of stakeholders that fall under our umbrella. And that gives us actually a lot of credibility with the U.S. government. And we actually created, in the course of my term, a government relations committee, as well as a government division, to field many of the requests and to address many of the issues that are being raised at both the local, state, federal, and even at the international level. And this year, with the conference being in D.C., we really wanted to capitalize on the opportunity for members to reach out to their legislatures and to bring up issues that are important to us as translators and interpreters. So we are actually organizing a one-day event on the Wednesday before the conference that will help bring people together, provide them some initial training about lobbying, and then take them down to Capitol Hill where they'll be able to connect directly with their representatives. And of course, we encourage everybody out there to contact their legislatures throughout the year to bring up issues related to translation and interpreting. I think this brings us really to the end of this episode, and I would like to thank everyone out there for joining us. It's been really gratifying to see the traffic to this podcast going up every episode. And we would like to remind you that you can now subscribe to the ATA podcast on iTunes, as well as listen to it right here on the ATA website. So next time you hear from us, Matt Baird will be back. So I'd like to thank everybody for listening. Corinne, do you want to say anything, any final thoughts?
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening, and we will talk to you in our next episode.
Great.